In this lesson, you'll take a look at Dreamweaver CS4's panel and panel groups. Now, if you're used to using previous versions of Dreamweaver, you'll notice that the user interface has changed slightly. All of the Adobe CS4 applications now have a unified interface. So let's go ahead and look at the behavior of panels and panel groups. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is reset your workspace, as we did in the last lesson. Choose Window, Workspace Layout, make sure that Designer is selected, and then Reset Designer. That will snap all of the panel and panel groups into their default locations. Once that's done, let's go ahead and look at the behavior when we double-click on one of the panels. I'm going to go up to the Insert panel up top here. I'll double-click on it, and you see that it collapses. I'm going to go to the panel right below, CSS Styles, and I'll double-click on that one, and it expands. Now, when you have two expanded panels, such as the CSS Styles panel and the Files panel, you can place your cursor between the two. You'll see a small double arrow, and you can click and drag to extend either one of those. Now, one small behavior that I want to show you here, which was a little confusing to me the first time I saw it, if I double-click CSS Style so that it becomes collapsed, and then I attempt to reduce the size of the files, I can't. You see that there's no double arrow there. So you must have two expanded panels in order for them to expand or contract. Now, at the same time, you're able to tear out one of the panels and put it on its own if you choose. So let's do this with the AP Elements panel. I'm going to go over here, click and drag to the left, and I'm going to tear out the AP Elements panel, and it becomes its own window at this point. Now let's say that I wanted to turn this AP Elements panel into its own group. What I'll do now is I'll click and drag the AP Elements panel, and I'll put it between CSS Styles and Files. So I'll do it like this, click down here. You'll see that there's a small blue border between the CSS Styles and the Files. When I let go, we now have another panel group. Now just be a little careful when you're adding multiple groups. You'll see here that if I attempt to expand the Files panel by clicking and dragging up, I can only go so far. In other words, there's a limited amount of space I can use, and this depends on your monitor resolution as well. So what I'll do here is I'm going to click and drag AP Elements back up, and I'm going to nest it back within CSS Styles. And then I'll click on CSS Styles to activate it. Now again, let's just take a brief look at the Files panel down below. We can see here that I'm working with the imported site that I created in the last lesson. The Files panel has one unique behavior that is unlike any other panel in this group. You'll see this icon here. This is the expand icon. If I click on this, the Files panel becomes its own window. This is extremely useful when you have a large site, and it becomes particularly useful when you're working with a remote site. So here on the left-hand side would be the remote site, for example, an FTP server, and here on the right-hand side is the local files. Now, if you'd like to collapse this back into your panel groups, we would click on this button here to collapse, and it's automatically nested back in the panel group. Now, the last thing we'll do is we'll save this current workspace by going to Window, Workspace Layout, New Workspace. And for the workspace name, I'm going to go ahead and call it Chapter 1. Click OK. And now we have a workspace that we can use and return to at any point. And so the last thing we'll do here is see how this works. I'm going to choose Window, Workspace Layout, and I'll go back to the Designer layout, which is again our default. And then I'll go to Window, Workspace Layout, and you can see here at the very top is the custom workspace that I created. Go ahead and choose that. And we now have a custom workspace that we can return to at any given point.